Bit of crack. What's the price of Bitcoin in 2030?
2030, I think 2030, I think, again, the gold analogy and, the $10 trillion market cap, very achievable. So I think that's putting Bitcoin at like $500,000.
Inflation is definitely a problem throughout the world and throughout Ireland. Where do you think this goes, or how do people manage this, do you think? Guys, welcome. It's Crypto With Dinny podcast here today. I've got a great guest, James Nagle from Bitcove. Crypto With Dinny is the home of the Bitcoin pension plan. We teach people with our consulting and workshops how to set up what I call a plan B. Our traditional pension, it's a 40-year plan. With a crypto plan, some people have done it in 4 years. If you want to know how to get started, jump onto my website, cryptowithdinny.com, and check out my free Bitcoin basics workshop. Also, if you want to become part of the community, hit the like, hit the subscribe, do your daily exercise, and you won't miss any of the amazing guests. And just before I introduce James, he's sitting there listening to me ranting. I just want to say that nothing on Crypto With Dinny is financial advice. It's just some entertainment. So, James Nagle, co-founder of Bitcove, Ireland's possibly first crypto exchange, are you guys?
Not first. There was a platform called Aircoin that was launched
Right.
in 2014. Yeah, so a guy called Dave Fleming set that up. I think they closed in 2018. So they were the first guys to provide Bitcoin to the Irish public, and that's actually where I bought my Bitcoin first day, believe it or not.
Wow.
So yeah, back in 2013, May 2013.
Yeah,
Um,
it'd be awesome to start at the beginning and tell us your story, I suppose, of coming into Bitcoin and sort of then how Bitcove came about, James.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so I did a master's in computer science and I had a module on encryption, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole from there. So yeah, I heard about Bitcoin, looked to purchase it. Luckily, as I said, came across a website called Aircoin, made it very simple to purchase. So I bought, I think, probably all of them, like, put a small investment in at a time. And then Bitcoin started to take off in that 2013, 14 time period. I think it peaked up to $800, $900. I think we bought around $250, something like that. So that's what got our interest into it. And then from there, we just kind of went down the rabbit hole. There was such a strong community at the time. There was, the Bitcoin talk forum was like a center. I think now there's like a lot of different areas to go. Back then, there's only like, literally two places: Bitcoin talk forum or the subreddits, and everything kind of focused around there. You had kind of the core developers like Gavin Anderson, Mike Hearn, Amir Taki, kind of, really prominent on the forums and communicating with people. So today you don't see as much like the lead developer. I think it's Dutch kind of stays kind of in the background and doesn't interact as much. But yeah, obviously still carrying on a huge role. But yeah, so that's why we got involved in Bitcoin in that sense, and just kind of when the price kind of rise, we got more interested, as I think naturally everyone does. And then we started looking at, other coins. So like Litecoin was born in 2013, creator Charlie Lee. So we looked how we purchased that. Wasn't many platforms out there. We never actually bought from Mt. Gox, but there was a platform called BTCE, and that kind of had a list of different cryptocurrencies. So long story short, we ended up brokering from there, Litecoin, on these kind of peer-to-peer platforms. So that's really where we started off in terms of, our business.
Wow, that's awesome. So, what year, I suppose, did Bitcove become official, do you think?
It was the next year, yeah. So 2014, pretty much,
Right,
like, I
yeah.
think we weren't in too long. We're like this, it was just so difficult to buy it. There was very little options. Like Aircoin did Bitcoin, but if you want to buy anything else, there was, you're just sending money to, like, or it was easier to send Bitcoin to these platforms and convert it into Litecoin, things like that. So yeah, straight away we're kind of like, this is massive opportunity here. So 2014, myself and my brother Peter, we joined forces and set up Bitcove. Luckily enough, we got into this accelerator. That was, we were just out of college, and there was an accelerator in UCC which enabled young graduates to, give them the tools to start with their own business. So we went on that, and yeah, it was, good learning opportunity for us. So like we knew we had an idea, or we had, a good project. We're kind of making money from the get go, and but yeah, it's the kind of auxiliary kind of stuff in terms of how to grow a business, how to market it, getting your accounts in order, things like that. So that was very helpful for us.
Yeah, awesome. Tell us a little bit about Bitcove today. Like, what's typical business like for you? I know you've offices in you're in Cork and Dublin, right? But
Yeah,
what's going on today with you guys?
yeah, the main office in Dublin, Pearse Street. So yeah, we've been based here for the last year and a half almost now. Previous to that, we're in Cork. We still have a presence in Cork, but it's kind of scaled down. It's more of a, it's not a drop-in center. It's a 365 IT hub. So, you can arrange meetings there as well if people want to. So your typical day ranges a lot. We have the website and we have, support staff on that. So they're kept going with, queries on the live chat or phone calls coming through. Then anything that's kind of like, that they can't handle, it might be kind of pushed up to me or Peter, and we'd have a look at it. So, and then ATMs, we've rolled out a lot of ATMs in the last 2-3 years. So we think we have 16 ATMs currently placed, and we have another, I think, 9 to go in the next few months. So if you know any locations, or if anyone listening knows any place they want to insert an ATM, give us a shout, and we'd be happy to look at it. So the range is really, from calls to talking to third-party vendors. There's a lot of integrations on our platform, from KYC to, General Bytes is our ATM provider, their software. So, working on all that and keeping the team together is the kind of core activities.
Yeah, the ATMs are cool. Like on the workshops, I'm always teaching the guys about them. Like, go down to the ATM, put some euros in there, and just experience the journey of getting it sent to your wallet, and that's really cool. And people are to be surprised. They're like, no, there's not. I'm like, type it into Google, you'll realize there's actually a good few Bitcoin ATMs all over Ireland. And as you say, user even expanding. That said, Lee, talk to me about 2020. We've had this recent bull run. I think my thesis was always sort of 2021, Bitcoin became a bit more mainstream. That it's not fully mainstream, but most mainstream people are like, right, it's not going to go away. It's came and popped and came and popped and came and popped, but it keeps getting stronger and stronger. How has your business reacted since 2020? Have you seen an influx of customers? Have you seen an influx of interest?
Yeah, I guess up in 2020 we had, there's 3 on the team, and now we have 10. So there's been a massive, growth in our own team, and the volume. There's just basically to keep up with the volume of calls and the trade requests, things like that. So and I think the most interesting part, I think, is a lot of companies. So previous to that, like, we've been operating since 2014, 2017. You didn't have any companies really coming to us. You had retail clients buying kind of small amounts, but that really has changed since 2020. You have larger companies purchasing Bitcoin, putting on their balance sheet. So that was a big kind of change for us. So I think that, Elon Musk and Michael Saylor kind of kickstarted that, really, and, the whole fear of inflation, and, they were dead right now looking back. And that really did kickstart kind of a role in that regard. So it's great to see companies kind of recognizing that and taking lead from the likes of Michael Saylor and Elon Musk. So it's busy days in that regard.
Yeah, that's cool. My guest last week um, was saying, he said to his accountant, we want to put Bitcoin on our balance sheet. And the accountant was like, no. And he's like, well, hold on, Tesla done it. Why can't I done it? Why can't I do it? And he also said, like, it might be the first time you've done this, or it might be difficult, but I promise you, more companies are going to want to do this. So be ahead of what your customers are going to ask you for. And again, that's part of my thesis on with the consulting. It's not just private individuals, it's people who have, medium-sized businesses and small businesses, and they're just like, we're 100% in cash in the bank here. Maybe we'll diversify a little bit and get some crypto exposure or Bitcoin exposure. In terms of the solutions you guys offer then to more businesses, would you help them with the custody, or would you provide custody solutions, or just education on that?
Yeah, education more so. So, like, our kind of typical client, they want to buy maybe 10K plus, and they want to, how to secure it for the next 3, 4 to 5 years potentially, and like, we can offer the best practices in terms of, hardware wallets, which ones to use if they've any issues. So setting them up, they come into the office and we run through it. So we're a non-custodial platform. We don't store customer funds. So and we like to kind of remain that way as long as possible. Even though the market is changing and there is better solutions out there for custody now. Fireblocks and Bitcove do a lot of integration on the back end of exchanges. But we definitely like the idea of, taking custody of your own crypto and, being your own bank, essentially.
What's your own sort of ideals on crypto? Are you a Bitcoin maxi? Are you a ETH maxi? Are you a lover of all protocols? Or where do you stand personally?
We label ourselves as a Bitcoin exchange. We do offer, I think it's like up 38 different cryptocurrencies. So each one we have vetted. So we would be kind of, we'd have interest in all those coins. But predominantly, yeah, it would be Bitcoin. Like would be our main focus. Bitcoin has its kind of use case as store of value. I guess the more exciting thing for me and maybe the team in Bitcove is kind of the DeFi space and what's happening there between, synthetic stable coins, like MakerDAO and DAI. You have automated markets like Uniswap and Curve Finance. You have automated lending with, Compound and Aave. You have, automated investment strategies with Yearn. So that's what I think those kind of 4 or 5 companies are listed there. They're kind of the initial companies, and a lot of the DeFi space is built out off them. Iterations of that. So if anyone's, I think it's good if anyone's interested in getting to DeFi and things like that. I think it's definitely good, well worth your time looking at the white papers, seeing how they're, how they're transposed, and you get a really good understanding of the whole DeFi space from that. So yeah, that's where, the metaverse, NFT, things like that are obviously of interest, but, I think it's definitely kind of, store of value in Bitcoin and the DeFi space that kind of grabs our, focus.
That's what you're mainly interested in.
Main interest on a personal level and the company too. Yeah, we kind of keep them kind of our platform wouldn't be fantastic if you want to buy the likes of Shiba token. We don't list that, or Elon token, or I think even Joe Rogan's dog has a token now as well. So, there's other platforms for that, and there's other, you can go on to decentralized exchanges and take a punt, but we try to keep things as easy as possible and try not to kind of, start pushing things at clients or customers that may confuse them or may not be there in a year's time or things like that.
Sure. Would it be a fair assumption to say that you wouldn't sell something that you wouldn't own?
Yeah, pretty much. Or I haven't purchased or sold in the past. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
fair
be
enough. Yeah,
pretty accurate.
that's awesome. So what's the plans for Bitcove over the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's just trying to expand our services. So like the whole kind of idea is to make purchasing or getting into crypto as easy as possible, kind of stripping away the complexity. So our platform is, super easy to use in terms of if you want to do a bank transfer, card payment, and then if you want to buy via cash, you can do it via our ATMs. So I guess just expanding upon that, like we've just marketed to Ireland, so maybe pushing outside of Ireland, rolling out more ATMs within Ireland and other European countries, and then it's always a case of, if we do add in, like, will we add in a wallet to the platform, or will we, go down a non-custodial wallet route? So you have some cool wallets that are non-custodial, like Blockstream have a green wallet, or Exodus, or things like that. So we're kind of tying with the idea of creating one of them that you could then link to Bitcove, and then you can offer all the other services that other crypto exchanges offer via this, non-custodial wallet. So, debit cards, you could hook up to DeFi platforms, the DeFi aggregator to get the best interest, or things like that. So that's what we're kind of looking at. We like to maintain the whole non-custodial aspect, and, giving people control over their own funds and not being reliant on, a central authority. So yeah, we'll like to keep pushing that way. So we'll see what the next few years bring.
What's it like in Ireland? Because I know it was, geez, there was that newspaper about the central bank chatting about cryptocurrencies, and it was really negative. Like, it was kind of ironic, like, coming from central bank. But I suppose, what would we expect? Do you think in Ireland it's more difficult to operate? Are we a little bit behind with understanding and regulation than say the UK, or than say the US?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty on par. Like, I think it's
Really?
not easy for any. Yeah, yeah. Like, banking wise, like, we had, like, that's the only real negative I can say is that, Irish banks don't support Bitcoin companies in our activity. Education wise, where you're focused on a different scenario, I'd imagine. But if you're kind of dating, and I can understand that. Like, it's how do they, I suppose, offer our service to us versus another client, and how do they charge? Like, our bank now is in Lithuania, and they charge accordingly for the service we provide. So, it's a high banking fee we have every year, and Bank of Ireland probably don't have that kind of, fee structure or whatever. So yeah, I think, like, in the UK up until 2 years ago, you couldn't get, there was no, like, crypto exchange with a bank, with faster payments. There was some banks in Gibraltar and other places, but with faster payments there wasn't. But that's changed now. You have Clearbank in the UK, and they have a lot of e-money institutions on top of that offer crypto services and platforms. But Ireland as a whole, I think it's a very good country in terms of, like, you have a working group called Blockchain Ireland. They hold
Yeah.
free monthly meetup, or I think they're starting to do in-person meetups this month, but previous to that, throughout COVID, they're doing online meetups, and they're
Yeah.
very good in encouraging things and getting people speaking at them and startups. So and then like a lot of the top platforms are based here at the moment, or they have some European presence here. You have the Algorand Foundation. They're very active in the kind of startup scene in Ireland. So even this morning I think it was a company called Wavelength. It's a brand new startup, and they've raised $250,000 from Algorand, and they're in a Web3 style decentralized social media platform. So yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunities in Ireland. There's a lot of companies are coming here for a reason, as it's low corporation tax. But
Yeah.
besides that, there's a lot of developers and things like that. Even actually, the last weekend we're down in Cork. There was a Bitcoin meetup there, ran by the Steely Mining crew, and there's a Cork company that started like a mining operation. So they have an office in Cork City Centre, and they demoed the mining equipment. So it was great to see. So it definitely is a strong community here, I would say. I think with COVID, it was a little bit fragmented. There wasn't many meetups in person and things like that. The one thing I can say though, I think like what happened, like we used to go to meetups back in 2015, 2016. It was just Bitcoin, and then 2017 came along, and you had all these cryptocurrencies, and the meetups got diluted. So now you had an EOS meetup, you had a Ethereum meetup, you had, so I suppose having just like a Bitcoin, a crypto, kind of everyone kind of went into their own kind of, kind of followings, or an XRP meetup and things like that. So but hopefully we can kickstart some kind of Bitcoin meetups or crypto in general meetups again in
Yeah.
Dublin.
Yeah, it got diluted, as you say, I suppose. And just to give a shout out, Blockchain Ireland, there is a meetup it's a Zoom. It's Tuesday next week at 8:30. So if anyone's listening wants to check that out. So just to chat a little bit about Bitcoin, how do you see Bitcoin itself developing over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? Do you see it becoming a digital gold?
Yeah, I think it's a long way down that path already. So like I know it's under the $3 market cap now, but I think what goal is a $10 trillion market cap, and for Bitcoin to surpass that, I think is very the next 10 years is very doable. I think you're seeing like El Salvador putting it on their books. I think it's going to be a snowball effect, especially when they get I think the big thing with El Salvador is that, like, how are the IMF going to react? And I think even the US Senate had some kind of not so kind words about it yesterday, in terms of how how they're going to prevent money laundering, things like that, trying to blow it out of kind of proportions really. But I think once they get the bond, then countries see that you're not going to be squeezed out of financials. There is alternatives, and the bonds, that can be the best thing ever, in terms of countries borrow off the IMF, and they're consistently in this kind of debt loop where they have to borrow more to pay back the money they owe, and it just goes on and on and on. Whereas the Bitcoin bond in El Salvador, they're looking to put half of that into Bitcoin, and if it appreciates like everyone kind of expects it to appreciate in the last 10 years, and they'll be able to pay that off, and they'll actually be able to become a sovereign state, not tied, or not shackled to any kind of monetary fund like the IMF. So that's really exciting. I think if they can get that bond through, and obviously with the geothermal miners and the Bitcoin city, there's a lot happening there. It'll pave the way for a lot of other countries. This is a route. There is a path here, and I could see an explosion. See, even Ireland's central bank, I think they had a huge increase in gold in the last couple of months. Their gold reserves hugely increased. So I think central banks are looking for, actively looking for their assets to add to their balance sheet. So I think we'll need a few more countries to add Bitcoin, and then it'll become acceptable. It's like anything. It's like the economics back in the day. Everyone's kind of negative on Bitcoin, and slowly they kind of come around, and then it's okay to talk about Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin becomes it's just funny how it evolves. So I think we're getting there.
Yeah. You touched on the central bank buying gold. Yeah, I think it was nearly I can't remember what the figure is now, so I won't throw it out, but it was some substantial amount that they hadn't bought in 20 years or so. Inflation is definitely a problem throughout the world and throughout Ireland. Where do you think this goes, or how do people manage this, do you think? Is Bitcoin their
Yeah,
solution, or it's obviously not a one-stop solution, but like my investment thesis is I want to have exposure in this alternative system, as well as the system that we're in, that seems to be struggling with inflation, and 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 it doesn't look like that, you know, it's going to be, it's a fixable problem. It looks like it's going to be a constant bleed out. Like Charlie Munger only said the dollar goes to zero within 100 years. Like that's a pretty crazy statement from someone like that. And we know fiat currencies, they do tend to inflate and then become faster and faster. So where do you see Bitcoin fitting in as a hedge for Irish people? Do you think it's worth Irish people starting to learn and understand about Bitcoin for themselves?
Yeah, massively. I think like if they're not going to purchase straight away, I think it's what the inevitable is. They are going to end up purchasing it. It's either going to be, they can look at it now and purchase now, or they can, see their money slowly, you know get inflated away, and then they'll start, when it's, not too late, but they could have been a lot stronger position now. So I think it is only a matter of time. And yeah, 100% people need to start looking. And if not, if you want to purchase, you can just read about it, understand that a little more, can have conversations with people about it. But yeah, the Charlie Munger thing was very interesting in terms of, the dollar is going to go to zero in 100 years. He didn't say, but he said don't touch gold, don't touch Bitcoin. So like, he's not really given a lot of room for
What do you
anything else
own?
in that regard. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would definitely think people should, think that, some percentage of their portfolio should be, small percentage should be in crypto, just against the hedge, against, all the economic uncertainty that's coming down the road. And like, I think there were bumpy roads too. Like, it's not, plain sailing. Holding crypto can be volatile, so people have to be aware of that. There can be, significant drops. But we've kind of come past, I think the big fear for a long time is the monopoly of mining in China, and how that would affect the network. So I think, stamping it out completely, was probably a fairly harsh move, but in the long term, it made a more decentralized network, a more secure network, and we've seen the hash rate recover just as quick. So any problems that we have come across, that we're kind of going to be the end of Bitcoin, we have kind of, safely navigated those things. So yeah.
Do you see the energy concerns as being a legitimate cause for concern, or do you think Bitcoin, as everything, gets around it, innovates, find ways?
Yeah, definitely. Speaking to the guys down in Cork the last day, they were very much interested in looking at renewable energies, either solar or geothermal or wind, or even, different avenues. So mining in Ireland's not really practical. You can't connect them to the ESB network. It's break even at best. But if you can find renewables that that can't sell back to the grid, or they have excess that are going to waste, which is quite common. We hear of different renewables being turned off during high season because they just have so much electricity that the grid couldn't handle it, and things like that. So I think even Texas, I think in the gas fields there, they have innovative ways now of capturing that energy and using to run Bitcoin miners. So yeah, I think the energy thing is, it kind of, there was a big push there at one stage where Bitcoin energy is getting out of hand, it's bad for the environment, but it's kind of turning out the exact opposite, where it can actually make fossil fuels obsolete, but it can make renewables sustainable in a profitable manner, that wasn't possible before. And then if that happens, then the reliance on fossil fuels will reduce and reduce. So I think it could be the exact opposite of what people were saying 6 months ago or a year ago. So yeah, it's definitely a positive development.
Yeah, I suppose it can monetize natural resources that previously couldn't be monetized, because you can mine Bitcoin anywhere.
Yeah,
Whereas with electricity, there's no point in producing electricity off grid somewhere, because the cost of transporting it back where it's actually useful means it's unsustainable to do. But with Bitcoin, we can use these energies of last resorts and create this green energy. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. Since you touched on DeFi a little bit, how do you think that space develops? Like, how does our world look like with DeFi? Will it change it? What's going to happen here in the next couple of years in your sort of thesis?
yeah, it's definitely one of the most, I think, the most interesting space. And I think it's interesting too how the regulator want to look upon it. And like we've seen, Uniswap had to delist. Well, Uniswap protocol can't delist anything, but their website itself, they dropped off a few, I think it was synthetic assets. So yeah, I think that's where kind of for us at Bitcove, we're the main kind of, I think development work is happening. There's like some privacy protocols. One of the developers I spoke on at the start, Amir Taki, is one of the kind of core developers Bitcoin in the early days. He's working on a DeFi project now that's kind of privacy based. So privacy, a lot of this on-chain stuff is, I think you can track all the transactions. You can track the funding of different kind of projects. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he comes out. I think it's called Dark Finance or DarkFi is the website, dark.fi. So keep an eye on that. Tornado Cash is a pretty interesting project as well. So yeah, it's definitely becoming more and more prominent. I like to see, so far it's kind of, your collateral, you take a loan based on your collateral, but if you could, take a mortgage, take more than your collateral in terms of some social kind of credit system or some social, you connect in your social media platforms, your credit rating, things like that. Bringing kind of DeFi protocols kind of into the next kind of layer of kind of financial innovation, or maybe traditional financial companies will start tapping into the DeFi thing if they haven't already. But yeah, that's definitely interesting space.
Yeah, there's yield or alpha there, so they're
Yeah.
who's interested.
Yeah, I definitely tell people to be careful of the yield though. I think people chase this yield. Like if it seems like, I think the industry standard is probably 7-8%. If it's over that, I think it's, you have to ask like, how sustainable is it? How is the project producing this yield? Or and then in decentralized protocols, they have like governance tokens. And, you get your yield plus the governance token, but that only lasts so long. So you have to be kind of wary as well that they use the governance tokens to incentivize people to get liquidity on either side. So if you're borrowing or lending, you're kind of getting a payout. So yeah, that's
Yeah, one of my last guests was also mentioned that, and it's sort of my thesis. I don't really bother going too deep into it. It's like the high risk, high return stuff. It's generally high risk, no return, and you put a lot of time into it as well. So like your time is the most valuable thing. So I'm like, nah, not for me. let that stuff,
yeah,
see how it works out, and then maybe in time.
yeah, 100%. There's token economics too. Like a lot of projects sound good and they look good, but you look at the token economics and the distribution of tokens and how they're going to be distributed over time. So like a lot of Solana projects come out there the last year, and if you, a lot of tokens on Solana launched, and you look at how their token economics was, they had a very small distribution to start, pumped the price up, and then they slowly, they started ramping up the distribution then, and when the price was high. So it's a lot of trickery going on. Like FTX was as a platform that would launch futures then. So the bigger guys, they might not have been able to, there could be an investing period. So like if you're an early investor in some protocol or token, you might have to hold it for a year or 2 years. But now you might have to, so there's no way to sell it. But if a platform like FTX launched futures, futures for that market, you can now short it without, so you have thousands of these coins, you can short 1,000, so you're locking your price at the start. So a lot of, you definitely need to look at the token economics of the project. Great, but how are they structured and, who's behind them, things like that. It's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. My sort of thesis on it is when people come in, I'm like, just try and get your head around Bitcoin first, and
Yeah.
start there. And that might be enough for you if you're not a professional and you've got a lot of other stuff going on. But by all means, the other stuff is cool and there's loads of but like that, the barrier to entry is there's so much stuff going on, isn't there? It's like you can't be an expert in the metaverse and an expert and see what's going on in NFTs and then be fully up to speed on everything that's going on in the DeFi world, and then just understanding general Bitcoin maximalism and the deep philosophy there. Like it's just you get so
Yeah.
diluted, as you say, and then you get nothing done. So I prefer just to take things in chunks and focus on first what's of most importance. And to me, what's of most importance was always to learn and understand Bitcoin. And then when you have your head around that, decide where's the next sort of area in crypto to go in, because it is so broad. To finish up with, I suppose, bit of crack. What's the price of Bitcoin in 2030?
2030, I think 2030, I think, again, the gold analogy and, the $10 trillion market cap, very achievable. So I think that's putting Bitcoin at like $500,000. But I think, as we've seen before, like in 2017, Bitcoin, it just, when it moves, it just moves. Like it went $1,000, $20,000, did go back down to $3,000 again shortly after that. But it can, the momentum it gains and the kind of, liquidity issues, and it's going to get, in terms of the holders are getting, more and more bullish, and as bigger whales are kind of accumulating more coins. So I think that if we can stabilize around these prices now, that in 5 years time we could be hitting the $500,000 mark, and then in 10 years time we could be hitting $1 million market cap. It sounds maybe a bit crazy or a bit wild, but if you just look at the previous bull cycles and how how they've kind of catapulted quite conservative projections as such. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of upswing in Bitcoin. So that's a big thing too. I think people, like you're saying, they get, it's like the shiny new token. They think that they've missed the Bitcoin boat, that there's no return to be made in Bitcoin, or that, I'm better off putting my money in this low market cap, metaverse token. And yeah, and like the probability of that going to zero versus Bitcoin is, it's completely different. So I definitely think people should, not get alarmed by the kind of the price of Bitcoin. You can buy €100 or €1,000, and the upswing is still there.
Think in Satoshis. You can be a Satoshi millionaire
Yeah,
for 500 quid. And like my thesis on it is, or how I explain to people is like, the price of Bitcoin doesn't matter. If it's like, to me, say 40, 50 grand, it's a lot of money, but to Bitcoin, it's irrelevant. It's just what amount of the world's capital sits inside it and divide that by 21 million. At the moment, it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the world's capital. But as you know, if as Bitcoin draws capital from property markets, which it is, because I'm consulting with people who are selling apartments, I'm putting it
yeah,
into crypto. So in real world terms, I'm experiencing it. It's happening throughout the world. Equities, like the traditional stock market portfolio, was 60-40, but now there's a Bitcoin element being squeezed in there, which means it's taking capital from equities. Gold, the last 2 years, we'd expect the price of gold to move since we've 40-year high inflation, and it hasn't. So investors have chose Bitcoin instead. So it's and we've seen Real Pal, top hedge fund manager, sold all his gold to buy Bitcoin. So we're seeing capital leave that asset class and come into it, and we're just going to see, as you mentioned, the bond in El Salvador. That's a bond is a huge asset class, trillions, hundreds of trillions, 120 trillion or something. But now we've this one Bitcoin bond. So will we see a trickle from that coming into it? So the price of Bitcoin is just determined of divide the amount of capital that's inside it by 21 million. And if it's slowly trickling capital from all other asset classes, it's it's quite exciting. As you say, it's not a sure thing, as I try and help people understand. It's not, and you don't need to take a bet of I need to own all Bitcoin, but a small little bet can give you, because it's so asymmetric. And that's where a lot of these hedge funds start, is a small little exposure to it. And but it is exciting, and it will be volatile. We know for a fact that Bitcoin will go up and Bitcoin will come down, or Bitcoin crashing is inevitable. But like
mm,
over the 13 years, it's just higher highs and higher lows. When you do zoom out a little bit, and then for me, as someone who wasn't a super early Bitcoin investor, it's just like, well, crashes are my gift, because I'm buying
yeah,
this Bitcoin. These market pullbacks are a gift to me, because I now get more Satoshis for my euros. And again, that's what I try and help people teach with the dollar cost average strategy. You you're not trying to time the market. It's not going to hurt as much when these crashes do come about. You see them as opportunities and gifts to build your position, to build your little asset position in this sort of, whatever we want to call it, digital store of value, digital gold. Um, so yeah, really exciting. James, where can the guys stay in touch with Bitcove or find out more about you guys?
yeah. We're on all the social media, so on LinkedIn, Instagram, I think Bitcove, and LinkedIn Bitcove, Facebook is Bitcove, and then on Twitter we're Bitcoin_Ireland. I'm not sure why we did that, but we are. I think the Bitcove was gone actually, so that's why. So yeah, all the social medias, and then go onto our website, talk to the guys in the live chat, or give us a call, and the number is on the website as well. So yeah, more than happy to help anyone get onboarded, and any queries or questions, things like that. We're very happy, and yeah. So I'll say, like, to say well done to you, Denny, for providing education. I think you're probably the first person in Ireland to do that. So it's very important that people are educated and know what they're getting into, and not going into it blind. And yeah, it's a definitely a job that's um, needed. I think more people need to maybe to get into that role of kind of educating people, so fair play on that.
Awesome. 100%, James. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Danny.